Welcome to episode 5. We've all celebrated a last-minute goal coming from a set piece, whether it's a free kick, a corner, or a throw-in. It doesn't really matter if we're the coach or if we're just supporting our team. All I know is that it feels so good to score in the last minute, and it hurts so bad when we concede. Stay with us as we share with you ideas on how coaches can approach these unique, impactful moments of the game. Because football is a low-scoring game, winning or losing is often defined by details, and that is reinforced even further in competitive matches. For that reason, coaches should have a very well-defined plan for every moment of the game, including the set pieces. Before we delve further in this topic, let me clarify one thing. For ages under 14 or 15, I think that the opportunity cost of training set pieces is too high. At these ages, the kids should be learning to enjoy football, and they should be developing motor and cognitive capabilities due to the different learning windows in the player's development. What's more, in their training guidelines, some football federations are even discouraging training headers with younger athletes. And one of them is Scotland, which you may associate with a more direct style of play. So for these reasons, everything that we cover in this episode is related with 11-a-side football for ages above 14 years old. The first point of discussion in this episode is how throw-ins are underrated. Thomas Gronemark is a throw-in specialist, and he estimates that in a game, on average, there are 40 to 50 throw-ins. Now, he adds to this stat that a team will lose possession of the ball 50% of the times, roughly, after a throw-in. But how much time do coaches assign to training throw-ins as opposed to training corners, for example? And I do not mean the throw-in technique, which is important, but it's useless if you don't have a well-established dynamic of how you're going to continue to play. To simplify, let me tell you about two types of throw-ins that coaches can work on. The first is the short throw-in, which has the objective of keeping possession. The idea is that you attract the opponent and then play a quick pass to an area of the pitch where you have spatial or numerical advantage. The other one is long throw-ins to attack the opponent's goal. Sending a long ball into the box of the opponent has many upsides. Firstly, if the attacker gets to the ball first, then he can find a teammate or he can shoot to the goal himself. If, on the other hand, the defender gets there first, it's still very difficult for him to clear the ball, which may lead to a corner or to a second ball on the box. Thirdly, if the defender gets very nervous, he can even make a foul on the attacker or the ball can hit any part of his arm, and that's a situation that we should take advantage of. Let's head to the training pitch to show you how we can work this out. To work on a short throw-in, one of the options can be to set up a game like the one you see in the image, where the numerical advantage will allow the blue team to have an advantage somewhere in the pitch. Like this, they will start building the habit of using a short throw-in to attract defenders to then play where the space is. With time, you can increase the number of players to increase the difficulty and speed up the process. Moving on to the long throw-in, we suggest to make it also game-related. In this situation, we opted to show you that you can move the throw-in taker closer to simulate a faster, more weighted throw. It may be useful if your best taker is on another exercise or playing in the middle. This leads to the topic of second balls. How many times has the ball crossed everyone in the box without anyone touching it? And how many times has the ball been cleared to areas surrounding the box? And finally, how many times has the ball stubbornly rebounded in the middle of the box? What many coaches do is they train set pieces without opposition. It may be because they find it easier to get the message across to the players about the dynamics that they want to see happening. However, this approach overlooks the game context. More times than not, the play will not be finished after the first header. So it's important that coaches take these variables into consideration. To urge coaches into thinking about this, a study presented in the Sports Analytics Conference in 2018 argued that you are more likely to score from a corner after a rebound, meaning a second ball, than from a direct shot. It also argued that you are more likely to score from a corner after a flick-on from your teammate than from a direct shot. So now your question may be, how do I take that to the training session? Let me show you on the pitch. To practice a second ball from a corner, you can start from a standard position and tell them to play normally. If it happens that there's no rebound, then instead of taking another corner, the coach provides a second ball. In the first example, he passes to the edge of the box, and in the second example, he passes to the goalkeeper to simulate a transition. We opted for 2 big goals to decrease the playing time between corners and simulate the counter-attacking references of an hypothetical opponent. The next point of discussion is which one is better, man marking or zonal marking. As it happens with a lot of things in football, the answer is it depends. Both have its merits and its disadvantages. With man marking, you can easily get in the way of the best header of the other team. However, if he is able to set free from his marker, then he has an open way to the goal. With zonal marking, you may be able to cover very important spaces in front of your goal. However, how many goals have been scored in which the defender was too soft in protecting his zone? One thing that worked very well for me in the last context I was in was man marking. It was already ingrained in the players of the club I was training at, and when we tried to change it to zonal marking, the players were far less aggressive attacking the ball. Because we like to generate a discussion, I can add that putting all the eggs in one basket may not be the most clever way of distributing the resources to defend a set piece. What I'm trying to say is that if a coach goes with a mixed approach of man marking and zonal marking, he can cancel the best header of the other team with man marking, and he can protect some vital spaces in front of the goal with zonal marking. Again, what I'm trying to say is that there may be more efficient ways of protecting the goal. It just depends on the context that you're in. One of the problems about training set pieces is that, in my opinion, it's so boring. There are no great plays and most of it is just about following patterns. In addition, it may take a lot of repetitions for the players to get the dynamics right every time. Actually, in the past, I didn't even spend that much time working with set pieces because I felt that there were other priorities. However, after an experience with a less talented team, it completely changed my view on this topic. After analyzing a season that didn't go so well, I realized that we could have improved on some games exactly through set piece training. Because the team struggled to create danger in open play, I feel that we could have used the set pieces as a leveler. Having well-defined strategies for these moments could have allowed us to have more shots, more possession, and eventually play more time away from our goal. What's important is that I learned from that, and in my next experience, that set-piece training translated into more goals, more clear opportunities, and in one intangible thing in football that is very important, which is building momentum. Having the ability to have 2 or 3 throw-ins or corners in a row puts an emotional pressure on your opponent and helps your team build its confidence. Let's head to the pitch one last time so I can show you one way to train set pieces so that it's less boring for you and the players and it becomes more competitive. Finally, one way to practice set pieces is to define which set piece the coach wants to train. By making a game in a shorter field, the ball will be out of play more often, so you take advantage of that situation. When the Reds send the ball outside or score a goal, for example, the coach awards a corner to the Blues. If the goal is to train free kicks, then the same logic applies, but a free kick is awarded. Because we like hearing from you, here's this episode's Q&A. I got a question asking what's better, an in-swinging corner or an out-swinging corner? Well, there are some studies that argue that in-swinging corners are more effective, meaning that there are more goals scored from in-swinging corners than from out-swinging corners. And for that reason alone, I prefer in-swinging. However, imagine this. If I have David Beckham on my team, a guy that can deliver far better crosses than anyone else, then it will be probably more beneficial for my team to have in-swinging corners from the left and out-swinging corners from the right. The other important aspect to take into consideration is that you should keep your opponent guessing. So it's very important that you mix and match between in-swinging corners and out-swinging corners. However, even though it depends on the context, if it's a last-minute corner, I will go with in-swinging. The second question that I got was about how many players I should put in a box to attack corners. Well, the most standard answer that I can give you is 5. And why 5? Because I want one player to attack the goalkeeper, one player to attack the middle, one player to attack the penalty zone, 1 player for the first post and 1 player for the far post. This is 5. However, I need to take into consideration other things, like for example, how many players does the opponent use to defend? If they are defending with 11 players, then probably I can commit 1 more player and I attack with 6. If, for example, I know that my center back there is stronger and faster than their striker, I can probably risk a 1v1 situation back there to commit 1 more player in front. You see, it all depends on the context. Now, because many coaches go through the situation in their career, the next episode will be on delivering a training session alone. So comment below one strategy that you have to deliver a session to a big group without an assistant. Finally, if you like to trigger your coaching brain, I will be launching on social media, Facebook, TikTok, WhatsApp, a challenge where coaches have to come up with training exercises from randomly drawn constraints. So follow the links on the description to join the discussion. Once again, thank you for watching.